Good morning again. Wow, we just can keep talking about this virus, how it moves in and destroys our lungs, epithelial tissue, vascular system, creates blood clots, and it's all traceable back to hypoxia. That's the virus doesn't cause hypoxia. It moves in on people with hypoxia. Now, what is hypoxia? Another really, really excellent article came out recently. Oxidative stress. That means low oxygen and the problems it causes and its association with COVID-19, a narrative review. This is a Kurdistan journal, but very eloquently written. Scientists are all over the world. They all have the same principles, integrity, and they're just really rewording and what is already out there, basically that hypoxia, low oxygen, causes all disease, and this virus is no exception. So I have made some notes, made some highlights, and I would like to review those with you. This is a beautiful paper. I wasn't even going to make a video this morning. I'm like, I've kind of said it all. But the potentials of the virus, in light of this oxidative stress by this angiotensin ACE2 receptor, I can tell you this ACE2 receptor would not even be working, would not even be on the cell if we were oxygenated. This ACE2 receptor and its activation begins in the kidneys, from my understanding. What happens in the kidneys? Issues in dehydration, issues when we've got low oxygenation, and manganese moves in to cleave oxygen in emergency situations for our mitochondria. Before we evolved as humans, we were in a very low oxygen environment, very low oxygen. In fact, it was toxic. And we were just kind of single cell things. Maybe a few had gathered together. And whatever oxygen there was kind of fused through. And we had to be contained because we didn't have the energy to burst out, grow, etc. Well, algae came along. Let's put those in green. Algae developed, these single cell algae developed, and they produce oxygen, from my understanding, and the world oxygenated. They put it out, right? They're like a form of plants, like and trees produce oxygen for us. How do they do that? How do they produce oxygen? Well, trees love water, right? Plants and trees love water. And let's make a tree here. Whee! Nice tree giving us oxygen. Where's that oxygen come from? It comes from manganese that the tree harbors, that cleaves it out, takes it out. Great. They also trees produce, and they also produce glucose. So we need a little bit of glucose, but we need a lot of oxygen. We need a lot of oxygen. And a little bit of that and a lot of this equals us. Right? So manganese is a big part of this story. This virus, well, let's not go into the virus yet, but once the planet oxygenated, we co-localized. Yay! It went from no oxygen to lots of oxygen, like plus, 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 plus. And these little cells became bigger and bigger cells. You got legs and tails and fins and all sorts of stuff. And oxygen also fuels fish to be larger and larger. So this oxygen still diffuses. Oxygen diffuses But, single little oxygens coming into the cell don't do much. Things stay small. Well, this is what we've been talking about, mitochondria. I'll spell it mitochondria. Chondria, I'm not sure what that root is. I should. Co-localize. These are have their own DNA. They're a metals-based bacteria. With their own they have their own DNA. That means they're self-sustaining, and they are they produce on their own. They put out all sorts of material. They create material, and what's in them? There is iron. There's manganese. They love oxygen, and they co-localize with water. And in the splitting of this water, that's where this material seems to come from. So they co-localized with us. They went over, like the virus is co-localizing with our food-driven humans. And they co-localized with us. And so we will help you. We will come into your cells and we will work together. So here's a cell, and some cells have 100. Some cells have 200 mitochondria. Mitochondria also float around in the system, all on their own doing stuff. They don't need a cell. This is our cell. This is a human cell. With 100, say up to 300 mitochondria. And they produce nuclear level fuel for us. That's how we evolved when the oxygen levels went up. Millions of years, here we are. Okay? Pure and simple. So these mitochondria eat oxygen and they release nuclear level fuel, and our cells just grow and we evolve and we do this and we do that. And look at us. We've done very well. It's been a very good marriage to the mitochondria. We are the estate and they are doing all the work, most of it. We think we're in charge, but really they're in charge. We have our DNA, they have their DNA. They control our DNA. They enable our DNA. So this article goes into that, but again, most of these articles are disease-based. They tell you what happens when we are hypoxic, all the antioxidants. When we are low oxygen, all sorts of things start to happen pretty quickly. We get a superhuman effect. We get signaling to the DNA, but if it goes on for too long, like longer than get away from the tarantula, all right, good, it's gone. Whew, no more. If it goes on like chronic hypoxic, longitudinal in a long sense, things get worse and worse and worse. And the cell breaks down. So this goes into that reactive oxygen species. That's a big term that we kind of all know. Reactive oxygen species. They're bad. Antioxidants. Anti-oxygen, which they call oxidants or oxidants. Bad. Hypoxia is bad. What else does it do? The role of these things is firmly coordinated with what our level of oxygen is and the signaling. Oh, we don't have oxygen. Go do the antioxidants, destroy, cut stuff so that we can, survive with the oxygen we have. Oxidative stress happens with uncontrolled reactive oxygen species production. This is oxidative stress. or OS, they call it. You can read these papers. They're not impossible to read. Take a breath, start reading. It has to do with the electron transfer, interrupting the gating mechanism of the electron transfer. So in the mitochondria, they had the electron transport. So iron comes in a 3 and actually iron, this is how it works, I think. I thought, I'm getting mixed signals from some of these papers. And oxygen binds together and has a missing electron when it binds. So this is O2, but there's a missing electron. So when it splits, I believe it goes into oxygen and it gets that electron back. So maybe in order to, I'm confused whether it goes to, it's a little bit of math here. It's all counterintuitive. That makes it hard to judge it all out. But basically these electrons are coming in and out of here to make oxygen available for the mitochondria. And the mitochondria gives us ATP, fuel, nuclear level fuel. So in COVID-19, these electrons stop getting transferred because there's no oxygen. For one thing, the lungs are, compromised quite early on in this virus. Why? Why are the lungs compromised? Because viruses transfer through the lungs and the nasal cavities. And the virus, as opposed to the mitochondria, which has DNA, the virus, C19, has a fragmented, like only a part, like half of this and a bit, like maybe a quarter of the material needed to make itself. So whereas mitochondria is self-sustaining, and the more oxygen it gets, the more oxygen we give it, it builds, it crafts, it grows, it signals for, it builds the cell, builds the network, builds the sensory aspects of it, builds the ability to laugh at it, builds all sorts of things. So the mitochondria have DNA that builds. The virus has RNA that goes into our cell with this ACE2 receptor that is signaled, enabled, constructed, present, because why is the ACE2 there? Because of hypoxia, low oxygen, problems in the oxygen delivery to the cells, to the liver, to the kidneys, to the lungs, to the heart. All those things, when they're combined together in low oxygen, they signal for these ACE2 receptors. And what does the ACE2 receptor do? It allows big old blobs like a virus to come in and operate in the cell. And what happens when this RNA comes into the cell? It releases this COVID. It releases its RNA, and it has to. And we're in there making things for our own cell. We're building, growing, oxygenated, hydrated, stimulated, goal-driven, or sitting back watching TV and eating pizza all day. That's not good. And so we're making our materials. Well, this virus comes in and it takes these materials. Their RNA, this is the viral RNA, vRNA, needs to, that's all we get. And from that, it grabs this and steals that and takes that and destroys that and props into this, and it eventually pieces it all together by stealing. It steals our DNA. It takes from our steals from our own DNA, destroys our own DNA to create more viruses. And out it goes to find more cells. This is hypoxia. This is hypoxia. Irregular signaling of the cells. Oxidative stress occurs when the uncontrolled ROS, uncontrolled, why does it get uncontrolled? Hypoxia. Again, we've got a mitochondria, happy, healthy, lots of oxygen, no ROS, no problemo. All this oxygen, no problemo, none of this. You don't get the reactive oxygen species. You don't get the oxidative stress because there's plenty of oxygen. We need to change our thinking on this. And that's my series on Pro-Oxy is going to hopefully help you understand and just trust that that's what we need to do. So, and that causes irregular signaling of the cells, is how they signals. In other words, it's saying, oh yes, we're going to self-express. I call it the DNA God. You're all well slept, you have hydration, and you're oxygenated, and you're relaxed, and you're purpose-driven, and you're helping others, and you're not succumbing to worry or stress or strain. You know, you kind of getting stuff done, but you're not sweating the small stuff. We've got a lot of bits and pieces that have led up to understanding this, but this is the science. So these things interrupt the gating mechanism of these electrons, and those electrons get stuck in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria engorges and becomes dysfunctional. In hypoxia, the mitochondria becomes dysfunctional because electrons are not released, and calcium, it builds up in the mitochondria. It talks about that. You've heard enough about mitochondria, haven't you? Mitochondria love oxygen. So there's one, they have their own receptor. They have a transport. It's a transport, I don't know what it's called offhand. But, you know, when oxygen's coming in, it spews out calcium. Good. And what do we get? Function, more function, cell growth, cell firing, bada, bada, boom. When oxygen does not come in, here's the same receptor. What does it put out? Manganese. Why? Because manganese cleaves oxygen. And so it has a way to salvage and get a little bit of oxygen. And this is a process. It's and it takes energy to get all that done, time and energy. Deregulates, low oxygen deregulates the cells, deregulates them. Impairment of many important processes in vascular function. That's, you know, blood flow. Activation of immune cells. That's our immune system. Remodeling of cardiovascular. That's these blood clots and these angiogenesis, these new veins they're finding. Renal dysfunctions, kidney, sympathetic nervous system excitation. That's that epilepsy we were talking about. A starved cell will go, sympathetic nervous system. So inflammation, cell death, proliferation, I don't know what they mean there, migration, fibrosis, that means the tangles and clots and things. You know, it also, this can also happen through toxins, pollutants, and viral infections, or stress and low oxygen. So it's a whole damage control system signaled by the mitochondria who are low in oxygen. Remember, these mitochondria have built us in evolution, and we have played around with that evolution and have damaged these, done a lot of damage to our own mitochondria colonies, and COVID-19 is moving in on the glucose that floods our system. Glucose is all over COVID-19. Proteins that are sensitive, ion transporters, the electron transporters, signaling molecules, transcription. That means it's taking our DNA and bringing it, building our DNA so that we evolve. Cytoskeletal proteins, structural proteins that all regulate vascular, blood flow, cardiac, and renal function. So that antioxidants go in for damage control. And when you got those antioxidants going all day, every day, if you don't wake up with 10 deep breaths, if you don't wake up with one deep breath, it starts. Intracellular calcium overload. Calcium is not released. Fragmentation of DNA. DNA is like split into fragments under hypoxia. And then they go into other oxidases, enzymes and angiotensin, which is high blood pressure. High blood pressure. So calcium channels, because the mitochondria is kicking out manganese to get oxygen, so it can salvage a little, so it can survive. Calcium builds up in here. Remember, they share the same channel. This is relatively new information, but that's the fact. They share the same highway. It's a one-way highway. And when you're oxygenated, it's one way getting calcium out, and we're having time of our lives. When there's no oxygen, manganese is the only thing that's being driven on this pathway. And that causes high blood pressure, and the calcium channels, these are the channels, piles up the calcium, activating these other enzymes that and that amplifies the swelling, inflammation, and the damage to the cells for survival of the mitochondria. All right, that's about what I wanted to talk to you about. This article goes on. I will read it and continue to try to demystify the science. So we do a lot of science on damage. Medicine is based on problem-based. Okay, we learn a lot from these problems. Look how much we're learning from this. All these scientists are going at this desperately. It's a desperate situation. And what I'm coming to see is that we evolved in oxygen, and a lot of us did very well. Look at Simone Biles and all of these great athletes and all these great thinkers. And we know people who have gone the distance with being human, right? Now, in light of, let's put industrialization and farming and all that, industry, including farming, yeah? And commercialization. You have to buy everything. And we're still on the kind of coin system. Maybe we need to get away from that. I'm not sure. It's causing a lot of the stress, worry, fears, and this is amygdala. A lot of problems, mental health points straight at that amygdala. And what comes with the amygdala? Hypoxia. What triggers the amygdala? Hypoxia. What triggers it? The muscles. Fear muscles triggers the hypoxia. Not only does it shut off our breath, but it also, even if I do examples sometimes, when I do that, I can feel, you see the whites of my eyes pop up? That's the amygdala. So it's a system that's really strong. It has evolved over millions of years. These are millions and millions of years. It's only the last 200 years that we've had everything We don't have to forage for food or interplay with our environments that demands breath. We don't have to wait 5 weeks for food to grow on a tree. We don't have to wait until, an animal, we're able to catch an animal for dinner. Or, we had to work to get our glucose. We had to work for it. And oxygen fueled that. So we evolved that way. And now we have reversed. So it used to be oxygen first, then hydration also was also a big part of where we got oxygen if we needed it, and also the fluid that we needed to the mitochondria live. They keep their shape and they function in a fluid arena. That's important too. And during emergencies, they need that fluid to get that oxygen. And then, glucose was down here. With the plants were around, that's kind of a slow burning thing. And that's what we need. We need slow burning. We didn't need everything. We couldn't eat everything. Some things, gave it to us, fruits and such. Okay, well, what have we done? We have I can't make it big enough. We eat all the time. What do they say? Eat 5, 7 times a day? And some people eat a lot more than that. And these are the people who are, they're either overweight or they're ill, they're not breathing enough, they're old, all this stress has been tearing away at their, it's amazing how long we can survive on a hypoxic system, but if we want to thrive, we have to have an oxygenated system. See all these degrees in 10 years, and there's a doctor come with one breath before everything. Breath first. Oxygenation first. And then, so hydration is still important. We're not getting all that much of that anymore. And our oxygen we're not propelled to get it. We just kind of think, it'll take care of itself. No. A dynamic, oxygenated brain, heart, lungs. I would imagine I don't have too many ACE2 receptors because I breathe a lot for the last, since I was singing. Singing is a breath, and you press it into the lungs and you create vibrations while you're thinking. It's build. So it's very interesting. Please think about these things. And in light of this virus, we can regroup as a planet, regroup as a society, and try to understand what makes us human. Breathing, and what enables the breath. Lack of fear, lack of worry, basic necessities of life, a hot shower, friends, purpose-driven, all the things we've been talking about that support an oxygenated, free range, in the flow human evolution. So we want to evolve within human lifespan. That's through oxygen. Have a great day.